Web Marketing That Works podcast, episode number 129, with today's guest, Jason Leister.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
My name's Adam Franklin and I'm the co-host of the show Web Marketing That Works. Welcome along. This is the show for people like you and like me who love marketing on the web. You'll be taken behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments. We'll look at the good, the bad and the ugly. We confess what's failed and reveal the truth about what really works. Now the show today is brought to you by our book, which is also called Web Marketing That Works, and it's the 2-year birthday of our book. It came out in May in 2014 in bookstores around Australia, as well as on Amazon and Kindle and everywhere else. So that's a fantastic milestone. There's been many thousand copies sold, and it went on to become an Australian Amazon #1 bestseller, and we are very proud of that. If you've not read it or you've not checked out the templates, I encourage you to do so. The book is available on our website and it's $25 US. If you want to download the marketing templates for free, please go ahead and do that. You can access 33 marketing templates at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Okay, so today's guest is a guy called Jason Leister. He's a direct response copywriter, and he is also a member of the online mastermind group that I'm a member of. He writes a daily email newsletter called The Client Letter, and every weekday it comes out, and he's been doing this for close to a decade. It's a great read, and in this interview we are in for plenty of treats as he teaches us how to become an incomparable expert, or as us Aussies say, an incomparable expert. So with that, let's head over to the show. My name is Adam Franklin, and on the line I am joined by Jason Leister. How are you, Jason?
Very well. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Now, your business is called the Incomparable Expert. I love the concept of positioning and being incomparable in the marketplace. How would you define what an incomparable expert is?
I think the simplest definition is that, most of the people I work with are expert kind of advisor type. So we're dealing largely with individuals, right? And so really what it is it's doing the work required to show up in the marketplace and have it be clear that what you do for your clients or customers and the way you do it is such that you are the only person through which they can get, the results of that. So even if you're a web designer, one of millions of web designers, how do you show up? How do you structure your message? What things do you focus on that makes it clear to your prospective clients that if they want blank, the thing you do, they have to come to you to get it?
Okay.
And so first you have to be clear on it, and then you have to be good at communicating it.
And what are some of the things that we should be doing in order to position ourselves like that?
Well, all these answers that I help people get are all contextual. So it depends on how I refer to it. It depends on the who. It depends on the people you're trying to attract, right? And it depends on, like, what most service providers do is say, I do X, Y, and Z, and then they sit down and they know they're trying to sell it out there in the marketplace, and they think to themselves, how do I make them want X, Y, and Z? And so that's what they go out and do. And so when the prospective client asks the web designer at the networking event, tell me what you do, they launch into this big, long diatribe about all the things they do. So they kind of try to build a bridge from them, the provider, to the prospective client. And I kind of do it the exact opposite way. So it all depends on the prospective client that you want. It depends on the problems or pain, relatively speaking, they have, and it depends on the unique ways that you solve those problems. So, I mean, most of what I do isn't like, here's the 2-step blueprint to do this. It's more like a framework of thinking about things from the shoes of the person you're trying to attract, and then reverse engineering this like attraction system that's made for them. Does that make sense?
It does. So you're identifying who the people you want to attract as clients are, and then from that you're reverse engineering what maybe their goals and aspirations are, what their challenges are, and how you can help them and how you can add value to their life and work back from there.
That's right. And in terms of the incomparable part, how is the way that I solve those problems, relieve that pain, unique? How is the way I get them to the solution different from everybody else?
Okay. And is that a matter of, the incomparable part? Is that a matter of like just creating a new name for something that's your specific methodology, even though most people sort of teach the same stuff? Or is it deeper? Is it actually having a unique approach to it?
Well, I think it's deeper because the first way is cool, but it's something that anybody could copy, right? The guy down the street can come up with a cool name too. And so I thought about this for a long time. Like, I'm a copywriter by trade, right? And when you're selling yourself as an advisor, there's only one thing that can't be copied. If somebody wants like X service done or X result from a service, the only thing that can't be copied is what the client would get and how they would get it if they hired you, right? So really, the work to be done to become an incomparable expert is to, instead of develop attraction towards the service you provide, we're developing attraction primarily to you. They want you to do the service. They don't just want the service done.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Keep going.
Yeah. And so that leads into the question, well, how the heck do you do that? And that's where like the whole idea of the media platform comes in. And that's just a fancy word for a podcast, some sort of email newsletter, something that's strategically designed that demonstrates you, right, on a consistent basis over a long period of time, and gives these people the raw materials they need to sell themselves on you. And so it is actually reverse engineering a sale.
Okay. And so by delivering value and showing up, whether it's through your media platform, whether it's a podcast or a blog or an email newsletter, you're building trust and you're adding value and basically putting yourself on the client's radar and positioning yourself as you, as the expert, but they also get to know, like, and trust you as a person. And so that's something that nobody else can copy.
That's right. I mean, no one can copy you, right? And so there are three things I think that are important. Number one, you're demonstrating what you do, how you do it, and who you do it for, right? Number two, a media platform, let's say you're going to publish a podcast every week. If you do that, and if you go out there and tell the world that this is what's going to happen, you're making an implied promise that you're going to do that, right? I write a daily email. So there's no way I would do that unless I would promise the whole world that I would do it. Now I do it. Like, I find the motivation very easy when I'm risking looking stupid. So I force myself into starting it that way. And now that I'm doing that, every day, I get to choose whether I fulfill that promise or don't, right? And with each promise made and fulfilled, trust and credibility grows. And the magic factor is time, right? And then the third thing that's happening with this kind of general model is that, I mean, we talk about like creating USPs in business, and I finally came to the conclusion, I mean, I think about USPs a lot because I'm a copywriter and like what makes this product unique and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, like a USP is only real, or I guess the only owner of the USP isn't you. It's like that. It's the person on the other end. Like, it's in their mind, right? So the reason people hire me, I may think I know the reason, but chances are I don't know the reason. Like, the reason that's in their mind. And so when you get on this path of this media platform, with this regularly reoccurring adding value thing, what you really end up doing is providing enough raw material to the marketplace that each individual receiving that publication creates their own USP for you in their mind. You may not even ever know what it is, but they've taken this and they've taken that and this little nugget and this little morsel, and they've pieced together all these reasons why they should take a step towards you. And really the price you pay for all of this perfect customization is time to allow all that to happen.
That's a really neat concept of that USP forming in the customer or the subscriber or the buyer's mind. And I guess that makes a whole lot of sense too, because I mean, no matter how much we beat our chest and tell people how we're unique or what our your own USP is, our unique selling proposition, it doesn't really make much difference what we say. It's totally the value that the other people get from it. And I guess that's interesting in the fact that each different reader or each different customer probably would think of you differently because you've delivered a different type of meaning or value into their life.
And so, I mean, the only reason I know this, one, because I've been doing it for years, is because I used to try it the other way, and, you know, business maybe wouldn't be growing as I wanted it to, and so I would go away and, like, figure out, like, a new direction and a new angle, and, like, the website would go up with a new logo, and this was really going to be great, and then, ta-da, I would release it to the world, and absolutely no one would notice. And I just got so tired of that, maybe because I was so bad at it, but you're just taking a stab in the dark, really. So this is the complete opposite way. Like everything in my system are inputs that I control. I can control the fact that I can wake up tomorrow, God willing, and write an email to help people. And what happens after that is not in my control. It's not in my control whether someone calls to hire me. I don't really care. I've completely, I don't focus on those things because they kind of lead to frustration when the story doesn't go the way you want it to go, which leads you to trying to make the story go the way you want it to go, which is hard to develop attraction when you're giving in to those pressures and trying to force people to do this and that. And so I finally just was like, done with all of it. I'm going to invest all of my energy in the things that I 100% control, which is what I do with myself. And so that's kind of like how this whole thing grew up. And wouldn't you know it, it doesn't happen overnight, but when it happens, it's kind of like a snowball that just picks up momentum over time. You know, the bigger your platform and the number of people that you're impacting grows.
Yeah, and as you say, like if you do it consistently over time, then the people on that list are going to have an increasingly deeper relationship with you because you've been showing up, doing your thing for, in your case, an email every single day. For how many years have you been doing that, Jason?
Going on 5 years probably now.
Wow. So thousands of days consecutively.
Yeah, I mean, I just do weekdays, and I'm not perfect. Like I've missed a couple probably, but not many. But I really underestimated, and it's hard to communicate really to someone who hasn't experienced it yet. I do think much of the power is in that simple consistency decision. Not that it has to be every day. It has to be when you promised it would be.
Right.
There are a lot of markets for whom every day is not the right approach, you know?
Totally, 100% there.
Yeah.
So look, I've just got a couple of questions whilst we're on this writing, and particularly because you're a copywriter yourself and you write every weekday and you send that out to your subscribers. We were also touching earlier on about having your personality and people actually know, like, and trust you as a person. And that can be the difference. That can be the part that makes you incomparable because you're the only you. Yeah. But I know a lot of people are scared of putting personality into their copy, into their writing. And oftentimes I find people that are scared of putting their personality in because it might seem either A, unprofessional, 2, people might not like their personality and they get rejected. So I guess what's been your experience, and I guess how would you advise people to overcome that fear of putting their personality into their writing?
The first thing is, and you asked the question, so I'm going to take you into crazy land, but you can tell me if it's too far out there.
No, let's go crazy land.
I really think the first thing, at least one of the most powerful things that I ever realized is that business, really, that word, it doesn't exist, right? It's like we made that up. Because at the end of the day, we have human beings interacting with human beings. And even if it's one human being interacting with this mega corporation of 4,000, at some point, there's a human being that is providing the other end of that interaction, right? And so I think when you remember that this is really what we're doing here, no matter how professional and successful you want to appear, we're still talking about people, right? And so I'm guessing that nobody listening to this walks up to someone that they know, a family member, a friend, or introduced to a stranger, and completely freezes, right? No, like you just are who you are. And for some reason, that's okay when we're in the private world. But when we get in the business world, there's this whole like structure that we built around what that's supposed to mean and not, right? And so let's say we let that structure go up and now we're doing business. Well, now we've also been told that doing business is about taking the actions to get what we want, which is cool. Like I spent years reading books trying to teach me how to do that, right? And then I started selling myself out there, and I was like, wow, this is not a great way to be received as an advisor. Like when I go out there and make it clear what I want someone to do, that's not advising. It's hard to build trust when like you're going to go do that. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to do that, what am I going to do? And that's when this whole platform idea came into being for me. I mean, it's not a new idea. It's been around forever. But at the core of it, it is how can I be valuable to a lot of people without requiring anything in return? That's like the core premise of this whole thing, right? And I think the reason that when people sit down to write and they're fearful about how will people respond, it's because, number one, they haven't thought through what they really believe, like what they're really about. Because generally, when you know what you're about, you don't really care what people say about it, right? If you're clear on it. But more than that, you get fear if you sit down and you're trying to kind of manipulate your way to result B, and you're not really sure like which levers you have to push to get there. And so that means you're afraid of pulling the wrong lever, because if you pull the wrong lever, they're not going to like it, and then they won't let you get what you want, right? And so to me, that's a dead end. That's a great way to be frustrated. It's a great way to, when you sit down to write, be so scared of what they will think that you say nothing worth reading. So you kind of you cut off your own possibility. So if you're in this space where you're a business, you're a personality in front of that business, or you're an expert, or you're doing business with other human beings, what happens if just for a second you give up the idea of needing to get anywhere and put your energy behind the idea that you're showing up to provide maximum help and value for the people on the other end, and focus on that, and at first it's a decision. Maybe you can work it into a habit. Maybe it becomes a way of life. And if it does, you're going to realize that fear doesn't exist anymore.
Very interesting. I know from,
yes.
when you focus on the other people, it eliminates that fear.
It really does. So, I mean, I think that's a clue that you're way too self-centered. When I'm scared, it's because I'm caring so much about what happens to me, which is the exact opposite way of being successful in any business long term.
And that's exactly what they say with, say, speaking from a stage as well, as if you're nervous or overly nervous, then you're too focused on yourself and not what you should be uncovering and delivering to the audience. And I think when you, again, transfer that focus on the audience and away from yourself, whether it's on a stage or whether it's on an email or in business in general, then all of a sudden it's a completely different mindset, isn't it? Serving the audience as opposed to serving yourself.
Well, and that's really what it is about, right? And you can't find too many business books that talk about that. And if they do, you kind of know they don't mean it for real. But it is a really powerful mindset. Like, if you're truly serving someone, you would never manipulate them into doing what you want over what they want. Like, that wouldn't be a possibility for you. If you were really serving someone, you would do the work to realize how you should show up to make it easy for them to say yes. And so it leads to this completely different course of action that in this day and age, with the fact that anybody can get a website, anybody can do a podcast, anybody can, shout out there, the service way of action really sticks out just by itself, because a lot of people won't do it.
Yeah, because I guess you've got to take a long-term approach. You've got to put other people's needs above your own, which ironically is the only way to get that long-term success that you might have been after in the first place.
As a way of life, I think it's the only goal that leads to real fulfillment. I mean, if you're in business just for money, like there are easier ways to get money, And so maybe just think about, like, if this was your last day here, is that really what you would want to spend your time trying to get? Because it would be very much worthless. But it does seem that the universe rewards people who serve others.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and that's been my focus. Like I said, I'm not like a saint or anything. Like, I really sucked at the other way, and I had to figure out another way.
Yeah, it's more effective this way, isn't it?
Well, it turns out to be, especially the longer you go, because it's like the month when we get to the first day of the month, we're on the first day of the month. You're not starting from scratch. You have this long history of actions that have demonstrated value to people that you're benefiting from.
Okay, so we need to serve people. We've got that. What about if you're in the position where you're building up your platform, you're building up your authority, but you're not quite at the stage where people are knocking down your door to do business with you, and you actually need to go out and reach out to people and be proactive and prospect and knock on some doors, figuratively or literally? How do you go about digging for gold and finding and uncovering those opportunities while still maintaining your incomparable expert status?
Well, at the end of the day, it's still about solving problems, right? So whether you're solving a problem from someone who's come through your university via the platform doesn't really make a whole hill of beans of a difference from if you go out looking for problems to solve. And the good thing, but I think it's the frame of mind that is the important distinction. So I got a prospect so I can sell, so I can get some money today. Yeah, that's cool. I get it. We've all been there. And from time to time, we're all there, right? But if you can develop the discipline to never let that cloud what you're doing this for, which is to solve problems for others, I think you get the reward better and more effectively. So even if you want to kind of stir the pot a little bit, ask yourself, who's already gotten the trust and developed the credibility of the people you're trying to reach? Is there a way that you can be valuable now to all of these people and somehow get yourself in front of this group in a more leveraged fashion than you knocking on doors? And so maybe that's with the letter, maybe that's with some other leveraged tool, online or offline, or a combination thereof. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out, the problem you solve, where are the people that have these problems? And then how do I show up in front of them, even if I'm initiating that, in a way that they perceive as helpful?
Okay, that's good. So in an online sense, that could be things like going on somebody else's podcast where they have the audience that you're looking to serve. Could be like a webinar that you provide some free training for somebody else's audience. It could be maybe participating or presenting at a workshop or an event with somebody, again, who has that audience that you serve. And so you can leverage the trust that they've built up and you can serve that audience and deliver value that way.
Yeah, and I mean, even think about it in terms of if you write an ebook that solves a very specific problem that a group of people that some big name, has already organized, and you go to that big person and say, look, I know these people are having this problem because I see all the posts on the forums and Facebook and everywhere. This thing solves it. You can distribute it to your people with no obligation. My name is in there. There's no opt-in required. What I've done is created two winners in the equation, right? The person who is distributing it, the people who are receiving it, and I will benefit, maybe not like today. I'm not even asking for an opt-in, but I will benefit. Like, the magic of this platform idea is that these successes seem to come in increasing frequency and greater scale the longer you go. They don't always come in from the place the value went out. And for like a typical direct response, like web person, like me, that's really hard to wrap your head around. Like, we're used to tracing a line from input to output. But in this world, it's really hard to do that. And yet, you see the outputs. You just don't exactly know how the inputs made those. It's enough to drive like a direct response person nuts.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
But when I've proven it to myself enough that like I have no doubt this is how it works, and clients I have, they can't draw these lines, and yet millions of dollars are happening, right? And they know the inputs. And so it's not just me, like I see it a lot of places. So, I mean, you're talking to someone who's been living this, so I have no doubt that it's true.
Totally. And so if we just simply focus on delivering the inputs, whether it's adding value, whether it's conversations, serving other people, publishing newsletters, podcasts, videos, and I guess the more of that you put out there on the web and the more of that you put out there in the universe, then there's all these inputs, and somehow, whether there's a direct line or more often than not there isn't, there will be the outputs that have the commercial outcomes that you're looking for, but sometimes it's a mystery as to how it comes around.
Well, and I think there are a couple important factors. Number one, you have to know the problems you solve for people. So it's not like going out there trying to get someone's attention and saying, how can I help you? Like, that's really hard, right? Because that's like what a consultant does sometimes. And that's why it's so difficult for them, because you're trying to get someone's attention and trust so that they can engage you, usually with money, so that then you can say, well, how can I help you? It's kind of like backwards, which makes it hard often. Whereas if you commit to solving XYZ problems for XYZ people, not only will all these inputs like eventually lead to good things, but you get really good at solving these problems. And there's nothing that sells like result.
Sure.
And so I had to like take my own medicine one day. I was like, wow, like why aren't more referrals coming in? And then, you look in the mirror and it's like, well, how many people succeed with all of your stuff? And then I came to realize, well, not enough. So I went on a path to streamline so that all I do are the things that 80 to 90% of the people that do them succeed with,
Yeah,
because
right.
Then people talk. Then referrals like just happen. So I did a little bit of growing up,
So what, you focus on those things personally, and you then advise your clients to do those things as well and cut out a lot of the other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so my thing is helping people figure out how to become this incomparable expert, kind of this ideal, and then how to build the systems that show that to the world. Like, that's all I do. And so that's why I can get on the phone with somebody and in 25 minutes, like I just did before we were here, we did this, completely turn somebody's world upside down in a good way, But like, that's what I do. That's the problem I solve. And so I try not to spend my time solving any other problems, because this one I do better than anybody I know, right? And so if each person can kind of get to that level of clarity about the problems they solve, then it makes this going out into the world and being noticed like a little bit easier.
I like that. I think that's a really good note to finish on there, Jason. How can people find out more about you and maybe even receive your daily Incomparable Expert newsletter?
Sure. They can just go to incomparableexpert.com, INCOMPARABLE expert.com. Sign up. Every weekday you'll get a new issue, and you can watch me walk my talk.
I love that. And one last question before we go. Is there anything else you'd like to get off your chest that you haven't shared that you'd like to today?
I think that probably, I hope that a time is coming, like in the general evolution of humanity, that people will finally realize that they can live the life they want by being who they really are. And so first you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to do the work to figure that out if you don't know already. And then you have to just have patience, but you mentioned fear earlier on. Like, that really leads to a lot of problems that someone can deal with their entire life, and they get to the end and maybe nobody else realizes it, but they do. They never really spent a day fully being who they were here to be, and so my work really has been connecting that with the world that you can actually like feed your kids with that. And so, if I had one thing that I wish everybody would know, it would be that.
That is Very powerful way to finish there, Jason. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for coming on the Web Marketing That Works podcast.
Very good. Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure.
And that's a wrap for my interview with Jason Leister. Some really cool tips on becoming an incomparable expert. I hope you found the show very valuable. Our intent is to deliver actionable advice. We always welcome and appreciate your feedback and questions. So please let me know if you've got any questions or guest suggestions or anything like that. My email is adam.franklin@bluewiremedia.com.au or tweet me at Franklin_Adam. And my new favorite is Instagram. You can get me there at Adam_Franklin. So to recap, if you haven't got the marketing templates yet, download them for free at bluewiremedia.com.au. Our book is on sale through our website. And if you enjoyed the show, I would love it if you could take a moment now to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Thank you for listening all the way through to the end, and I'll see you on the next show.